Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Emmet-Mountain Apprentice. That's the guy you can see on screen right now. And as always, I'm going to show you some gameplay in the first part of the video, and in the second part of the video we're going to take a look at the perks, mutations, equipment and everything else you need to know. Now let's get right into it. What this character is going to be is it's going to be a melee character, a slugger to be more precise. And the interesting thing I went for here was that we're not wearing any armor. As you can see already, we are wearing a hazmat suit, which protects us extremely well from radiation, but doesn't offer any kind of damage or energy resistance. So the reason I went with this character here is it basically started out as something different. I wanted to make something like a tribal kind of character, which was able to survive in very light armor. Think about something like wood armor or so on. And basically what I wanted to look at is there are quite a few perks in this game that usually people don't really want to use. Think about stuff like ironclad and so on. For the simple reason that these perks, yeah, they have quite a lot of investment to them in terms of perk points that can be spent somewhere else better, in my opinion. Basically, almost always the better option is to go for damage reduction in percentage based, rather than to add some damage resistance numbers. After all, 5 points for Ironclad, for example, in order to get 50 damage and energy resistance. Yeah, that's a bit much. That's 5 level ups and 5 perk points you could spend for something else. But on this occasion here, I just wanted to take a look at it, because for the most part they aren't worth it, since we do have diminishing returns, meaning that by the end of the game you're probably wearing a set of heavy combat armor or something along those lines, and it's very or relatively easy to get somewhere at 200, 280, 300, 350 damage and energy resistance. That's a definitely achievable goal. Now, I fear a little bit. No, I thought there was a sheep squatch. That could have been a bit boring here, because while it's easy to survive pretty much everything with this build, the tougher enemies, you do lack a little bit in terms of damage output. That's the problem. So you can survive relatively well, but your damage output isn't great, as you can see here. We're suffering in damage output for the simple reason that we have to, as I said earlier, invest a whole lot of points into maximizing our survivability, since we're already only using this hazmat suit. And as you can see, or probably noticed already, just see it. I can't really see the sky here because of all the shrubbery, but yeah, there we go. What did I want to say? Yeah, as you probably noticed already, we are using a vampire's weapon, a vampire swing speed super sledge, to be more precise, and a lot of our survivability obviously comes from this weapon. Now, the thing is though that this weapon alone wouldn't be enough in order to make us survive everything. You can go ahead and try to just unequip every piece of armor and use a vampire swing speed super sledge. That won't be enough to keep you alive in all the situations, because yeah, it's not like vampires works especially well on this kind of weapon. There are some melee weapons where vampires is also pretty OP, thinking about the boss blade or the ripper, where it can be basically immortal, or even something like a vampire swing speed hunting knife. That could be enough to make you not care about armor. But on a slugger weapon, they're simply too slow, even with the swing speed and the martial artist perk. You're still only healing for 2 HP with every single hit, meaning that, yeah, enemies can out-damage you quite easily, so I had to invest a little bit into defenses. There was no way around it. Now, you can obviously use, for most cases, you can use other weapons as well. Something more powerful, maybe an anti-armor or furious swing speed weapon when you're fighting something like a scorched beast or so on. The best bet would probably be to keep a zealot's a zealot's or a hunter's super sledge with you at all time, because going against single targets makes it easier to stay alive. Actually, dodgy works very well in that regard, and therefore, yeah, using something like a vampire's weapon for mobs when they swarm you is a good idea, but keeping something in the back end as a backup weapon, as I said, think about a zealot's or a hunter's super sledge in order to deal with those kind of enemies. That would be a good idea probably. I don't do that on that occasion though. I only carry this here super sledge, the vampire's version, and yeah, synergizes relatively well with our ricochet perk. Now, one type of enemy that screws with me consistently are the Mr. Gutsis we're now going to face. They're a pain in the ass. Super high damage output. I mean, it's not like they surpass a lot of armor since we don't have a whole lot, but yeah. The trick is to just get to them and hit them before they can actually target you, simply because, yeah, once you're getting an initial hit in, they are mostly staggered, and that's enough then. So as you can see here, first hit probably cripples their shell, and that's enough. Okay, so there's another one. Goes down relatively easy. Yet another one. The hazmat suit, as you can see, has been broken. I just unequipped it a few minutes back and had to repair it in order to equip it again. But don't you worry, the radiation resistance, as you can see here, still works very well, even though the hazmat suit is broken. And yeah, there's no point in keeping the hazmat suit in good condition for the simple reason that it doesn't really make a difference. So therefore I just used it like you would probably on a Berserker's character. Just, yeah, let it break, you still have it equipped until you equip something else, and there's no reason to ever switch into something else. Now it's time to talk a little bit about the negatives that come from using this character here. They're pretty obvious. Now the first one that you can think about is definitely that, yeah, you're lacking resistance. Now every single bit of armor that you could find would be better than having nothing, obviously. Another big drawback is that you can't wear under armor, which is relatively important on a melee character especially, since you can give boosts to endurance and, more importantly, strength. And yeah, especially the lack in strength could be a problem. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, 4 more strength or so would definitely be a nice addition, just boosting our damage a little bit. But as you can see here, for mobs, yeah, 2 to 3 hits. On super mutants it can be a little bit tedious, especially the first few you're killing, but once your adrenaline goes up a little bit, yeah, you shouldn't have a problem anymore. One thing I found myself doing a lot with this character is really try to actively aim for the head. It just works relatively well. I don't know exactly if it's different for the different melee weapons, but I have a feeling that the hitbox of the weapon definitely is a bit different. Makes it relatively easy to go for heads. That could be just my imagination though, so keep that in mind. Our attacks are not really a big part of this playstyle because we're using all of our AP for dodgy. It's just too good of a buff. And yeah, we have a swing speed weapon, so we want to go for multiple hits anyways. Once you go against single targets, like bosses or so, it's definitely possible to do more power attacks, and I would advise you to do so in that occasion, but well, as you can see here, we're doing just fine. This guy here merges a little bit into the door, but should have some guys up here. And as you can see, doing all of Huntersville, we lost about 1/3 of our health, so we weren't even close to being in a problem situation. We gathered a little bit of radiation. I just not sure where it came from. I guess it was from fighting the ghouls. Might as well pull that off. Just unnerves me a little bit, but okay, this was just a a level 50. There we have a level 60, but I'm fairly sure I saw some level 75 floating around in Huntersville. And after all, we're going for West Tech either. Now this character, the name is relatively interesting. What I want to do, since the moment I started to realize that this character might be good enough to use no armor whatsoever, I wanted to use a hazmat suit, simply because, yeah, there are multiple hazmat suits in the game at the moment, and they're really underutilized. No one ever walks around in them. Think about the Emmet-Mountain Swamp Camo hazmat suit, then there's the diver suit, the prototype hazmat suit. There's a few cool options, but you never see people using them because there's no good reason to do so. After all, I think Bethesda intended these things to play a bigger role, especially when it comes to nuke zones, but people either avoid nuke zones altogether or just use something like a power armor or the Chinese stealth armor, which is understandable. Those are just better options. The Chinese stealth armor, well, it boosts your stealth, and in addition you also get a little bit of defense. Even if it's not much, it's still way better than what you get here. Using the stealth suit could make you actually pretty tanky on this occasion. I'm definitely going to use the foundation of this character here for another build in the future, seeing how tanky we can be with relatively low effort in terms of equipment. So maybe the Chinese stealth armor would be a good idea to not use it for stealth, but seeing how tanky you can get within it. But yeah, that's not the point for today's video. And back to the character itself. Yeah, Emmet-Mountain Apprentice is basically just a little nod to the scavengers that work at the Emmet-Mountain disposal site. That's the place where Radiation Rumble takes place. You know, all the guys in the blue hazmat suits. And one interesting thing about them is that they have extremely high resistances, even though they're all in hazmat suits. It's something I didn't notice really myself, but I saw Angry Turtle talk about it, and yeah, they have something like 10,000 resistance or so, or 1,000, sorry, which is kind of ridiculous. And since you are basically doing the same but a little bit less effective, we are a apprentice, a Emmet-Mountain Apprentice. As you know, I wanted to go for a little bit of a science theme this week, and this might be the dumbest science character ever because he has only 1 intelligence, but after all, we're just an apprentice. But yeah, no point in doing any more here. We had to make sacrifices. So intelligence definitely was one of the stats that we had to dump a lot of points in order to have enough elsewhere. So this character isn't completely perfect for its purpose. There are a few other perks that we could have taken. There's a perk in Luck where you can get resistances by carrying junk, which is a technique that would definitely work here, just carrying tons of woods and steel. At the time, for a time, that perk was actually super powerful because it didn't have an upper limit, so you could get something like 1,000 resistance or so, if I remember correctly, just by carrying tons of steel or wood or whatever. But yeah, that's patched. It has an upper limit now, but still, if it's something like 50 damage resistance or energy resistance, that could have been useful. But after all, I decided this is the point where I don't want to level up a whole lot more and go with the character. It does its purpose. So the good thing about this character here is it's very low effort compared to other characters. You don't have to worry about ever repairing armor, and if you want to, every single bit of armor you can find, you can just equip, because it doesn't really matter if it's good or not. Yeah, every single bit would help a lot. It would also mean you could equip under armor and everything, but yeah, I found it refreshing to once not care for radiation and rather, yeah, just go in, kill everything. As you saw, we used 2 stimpaks during the whole video. I think that's very okay, and those were situations that are generally considered to be a bit tougher. I mean, fighting some floaters, that can definitely be problematic. And yeah, being surrounded by a whole lot of super mutants, if you use a Stimpack there, that's no shame either. But for the most part, I think we did very well. Yeah, I really like the character. It's a whole lot of fun. And let's talk about the mutations and everything else. So let's get right into it. Here we see them, the mutations. For once, there's only one mutation that I wouldn't recommend here, but we'll get over that in a minute. So we do have Grounded, which is important. Gives us energy gun damage minus 50, which doesn't concern us because we don't use energy guns, and the energy damage on our weapon isn't actually energy damage but fire damage, so therefore it isn't affected either. But we get 100 damage energy resistance in return, which is a whole lot. It's one of the best effects here. And then we do have Healing Factor, makes our chem effects less effective, our Stimpaks and so on, but we get health regen when we're not in combat, which is something I really like, simply because, yeah, we're tanky enough to survive most situations without using any Stimpaks whatsoever, basically leaving the fight with something like half of our health left, and that's all it takes. Even if you're just surviving with 5% of your health, you're fine afterwards. It's your health is back in no time, so that overall works together very well with the theme of our character to, yeah, be relatively low on maintenance. Next we have Marsupial. It's pretty standard: jump height, carry weight, what should I say. The debuff to intelligence is virtually ineffective simply because we are at 1 intelligence anyways, so yeah, there's that. And next we do have Skaty Skin. Another very important perk for this mutation for this character: damage and energy resistance plus 50 is huge if you don't have any to begin with, and minus 50 AP. That hurts a little, mostly because, yeah, as I said, we cannot power attack constantly, and we're using our AP for dodgy, meaning, yeah, 50 extra AP would mean another shot being reduced by 40%, 30% or whatever, but yeah, we can live with negative AP here. Then we do have Speed Demon, which is only important for the movement speed here. If you feel okay with not using it, you can obviously not use it, but I tend to feel way too slow not using Speed Demon. I think that's one of the mutations I have on every single character, regardless of if I have a weapon that I have to reload or not. Then next mutation here is Talons. This is the one that I would ditch. I actually thought I wanted to suppress it during the video, but I didn't have Talons mutation with me, so yeah, it had to stick here. The reason I don't want to use it is, firstly, it doesn't do anything to us. It only affects unarmed damage and would give us bleed damage if we were using unarmed weaponry, but we don't do that. And minus 4 agility is relatively hefty, yet again, big debuff to our AP, so yeah, we would have a bit more survivability without Talons. Pretty simply, more agility means more action points, means dodgy works for longer, but that's about it here. So yeah, Talons unnecessary here. Twisted Muscles, however, that's an important perk for us. Mutation, probably the most important one: extra melee damage, chance to cripple. That's huge for us. The negative gun accuracy is absolutely pointless because we are not using any guns whatsoever. Therefore, this is a plain benefit, basically. And lastly, we do have Unstable Isotope. Chance to irradiate melee attackers means if melee enemies get a hit in on us, there is a chance that we explode in a little mushroom cloud. The damage is negligible. Sometimes it works relatively well, most of the times it doesn't do a whole lot. But I like the effect, and it's a nice little gimmick, so you could add electrically charged as well. Would work very similar. I do like them on melee characters especially, but yeah, that's personal preference. You can definitely live without them. And then to our equipment, what we do have here is this Vampire Swing Speed Super Sledge. So one thing to keep in mind is, at the moment, it breaks super fast. Bethesda already said they are going to look into that and address the problem. So if it's back to how it worked recently, you shouldn't have any problem with repairing this weapon. It held for ages. Melee weapons were basically indestructible at the point, and I hope we get there again. but we will see in the future. Now, even though we have to repair this relatively often, yeah, the materials to repair are relatively simple to get. Um, Most notable ones are steel and adhesive. I think a little bit of wood, I'm not quite sure, or rubber, but yeah, you should be fine. We started the video with basically 200% condition, and yeah, as you see, we went through more or less one health bar. So yeah, as I said, that's something to keep in mind, but not groundbreaking or anything. Other than that, yeah, we do have the heating coil, just adding a little bit extra fire damage, and that's it. The swing speed is very important though, in my opinion. And in terms of armor, well, it's very simple. We just have this here hazmat suit, and that's it. So as I said, other options are the prototype hazmat suit, swamp camo hazmat suit, the diving suit, and for this character obviously the most fitting one would be the Emmet-Mountain one, but that's one of the toughest to get. I would guess it's the toughest to get. I mean, the prototype hazmat suits are technically legacy, the level 50 versions, but the level 1 versions are still obtainable in the game, and they make no difference other than that you see it's level 1 rather than level 50. But everything else is exactly the same. The resistances, the weight, the value really doesn't matter. So, I mean, the value is probably a bit lower, but yeah, who cares? So, yeah, that was a short bit here, and now let's take a look at our perks. To no one's surprise, we do have 15 in strength. We have Barbarian, Slugger, Blocker, Incisor, and Martial Artist. Now, Barbarian and Blocker are the most important perks here. Barbarian gives us extra damage resistance, where the higher our strength is, which obviously works very well with us. That's the whole theme of the character, getting resistances through perks rather than through armor. So therefore Barbarian is a must-have here, and Blocker, well, it's way too powerful, reducing 45% of the melee attacker's damage. That's huge. That's one of the best defensive perks in the game. Then Incisor and Martial Artist, those are the most potent perks for melee attackers in my opinion, for melee builds. Ignoring 75% of a target's armor as well as 30% faster swing speed are huge buffs to your DPS overall, so I went for them, and ultimately there was only room for rank 3 of Slugger, which in a perfect world you wanna have rank 1 of each, the Slugger, Master Slugger and Expert Slugger perks. That gives you extra 30 damage rather than extra 20, so there would be a little bit of a buff here. However, I just didn't have the single ranks necessary there and went for 1 here, so keep in mind a bit more damage is possible. However, it doesn't do a whole lot. We're currently doing something like 208 damage. Just a rough estimation, but I guess if we were using the 3 ranks of each slugger, the 1 rank of each of the slugger perks, doing 30% extra damage, it would probably mean we're somewhere around 215, 220 damage. So yeah, we're not missing out on a whole lot. Then we have Perception, where we have rank 3 with Refractor at rank 3, giving us 30 energy resistance. Obviously, if you have the legendary perks that are necessary, you could go higher here, maxing that out for another 10% extra energy and energy resistance. But yeah, just went on with the theme. This is one of the less necessary ones in my opinion, because energy resistance is already better for us than our damage resistance. So I'd rather love something that gives us a bit more damage resistance, but here we are. I had the points left, and therefore I went for Perception here with Refractor. Then the next very important stat here is Endurance, obviously at 15. I mean, we're trying to have as much HP as possible to make it more redundant that we don't have a whole lot of armor, if that makes sense. Obviously, rank 15 you can do a whole lot here. We do have Life Giver to yet again give us more maximum health. Then we do have Ironclad. This is the most straightforward perk on this regard. It just gives us 50 damage and energy resistance. So that and the Scaly Skin mutation together giving us 100 damage and energy resistance from the get-go, which is very nice. However, as I said, it's a whole lot of perk investment. 5 points, that's a whole lot. That's you don't see that often. You can think about Demo Expert or some of the crafting perks, but that's a lot of investment for relatively little return under usual circumstances. Next we do have Adamantium Skeleton, pretty straightforward, no limb damage whatsoever. Not being crippled is a nice thing, especially on a melee character, and yeah, wouldn't be a point in making ourselves survivable if we then have to use Stimpaks anyway in order to heal our crippled limbs all the time. You get my point. And lastly we do a Fireproof for obvious reasons. Yeah, not being one-shot by one hit by exploding cars or so on. There is an argument to not go for Fireproof but rather Ghoulish. We do have a big health pool, so we could survive most explosions just fine, but that's under the circumstance that we are at full health. And another big point is, yeah, Scorch Beast, we have to wait them out until they land, so they can hurt us quite a bit before they land just by screaming at us, which is pretty much completely negated by Fireproof, so I went for Fireproof ultimately. And Ghoulish, it does work, even if you have a hazmat suit in certain situations. Fighting a queen, Milo queen for example, I had this perk on and it worked relatively fine, giving me a constant bit of healing, but yeah, that's neither here nor there. We are using Fireproof and that's it. Then on to Charisma, we do have Lone Wanderer, shouldn't be a surprise here. 20% less damage is very potent for our means, and AP refresh, also nice to have, since we don't have a lot of action points to begin with. Even though we have high agility, we have some very severe debuffs, therefore AP regen is nice to have. And then we have Tenderizer at rank 2, which as you can see here we have Charisma at 7. Yeah, rank 3 would be possible. I just would have needed another level up. I was hoping that maybe during the video this would happen, but yeah. As it stands, we do have rank 2, but keep in mind rank 3, yet a bit more power. Talking about 3% more damage after the first hit, and that is multiplicatively, so that should be a little bit, but yeah, we went for rank 2 here. Keep in mind rank 3 is mentioned. Then we do have our Intelligence 1, which looks pathetic. It is, to be honest, but yeah, there was no way Intelligence was a dumpster here. We have 1 rank of First Aid, so since we have debuffs to our healing potential from the, sorry, how's it called? The effect that the healing factor mutation. Sorry. So we want to have a little bit of that back. We do run Class Freak, so basically First Aid and the debuff from healing factor are about on par with each other, meaning that Stimpaks do pretty much what they are supposed to do, and there's nothing else we needed here, so that's it. And then we have our third stat that is at rank 15, which is Agility. We do have Action Boy. I already mentioned why AP refresh is important. Quite a lot of debuffs to our action points, to our agility, so getting them back faster is a nice thing to have. Synergizes well with Lone Wanderer. Then we do have Evasive. Each agility point adds 3 damage and energy resistance up to 45. We have a whole lot of agility, so yeah, Evasive is a good idea here, giving us just a little bit of extra resistances. That's the main reason we run Class Freak, by the way, to mitigate the negatives from our debuffs, just to give us more tankiness, in addition to having more room for dodgy, more AP for dodgy, sorry. Then we have 1 rank of Moving Target. Simple reason, I wanted to have agility maxed out and there was 1 point left, and I thought like this was fitting with the whole character, giving us 15 damage and energy resistance when we're sprinting, which often happens in between targets. We sprint from one target to another, or to close in the gap once we're getting into a fight, and yeah, every bit of damage and energy resistance counts here, but this was a filler perk, to be honest. Another good option here would probably have been, how's it called, Born Survivor, so you just have a little bit of a safety net using a Stimpak once you're at 20% health, but usually you're not damaged so fast that you don't have time to react. You can see if a fight gets out of hand and you're constantly losing a bit of health, then you have to use a Stimpack, but it's usually a relatively slow process, so you do have time to manually do that. Then we have Adrenaline. I wish I could have used other perks here, but Adrenaline was just necessary. We have so many sacrifices when it comes to damage, thinking about only one rank of Slugger and no under armor and so on to boost our strength even further. That means that, yeah, we need at least one perk that's just generally good for damage. Basically our important things here are Tenderizer and Adrenaline. Adrenaline very potent for this character, I definitely recommend it. And lastly we do have Dodgy, one of the best defensive perks under certain circumstances, and this is one of them. We don't need VETs, so being out of AP isn't the worst thing in the world. Yes, we can't really power attack anymore, but we do go for the swing speed anyway, so power attacks aren't really necessary on this occasion, and therefore Dodgy doesn't really have a downside, but gives us a lot of survivability for a good amount of time during the fight. And lastly, we do have Luck at rank 5. We do have Starch Genes and Class Freak, very simple combination here, just make our mutations stay, not getting new mutations, and in addition reducing the debuffs. As I said, oftentimes I'm not using Class Freak because I think the debuffs are okay for most mutations, and I have to live with them, and makes the character a bit more unique. But on this occasion, yeah, especially the debuffs to agility, they were crippling. Because they both reduced my overall resistances as well as the effectiveness of Dodgy. So yeah, I had to go for Class Freak here. And that's it when it comes to the standard perks, and now we're going to take a look at the legendary ones, and those are pretty straightforward. You can see here we have one rank of collateral damage, giving us a little bit of a chance that an enemy explodes when it's killed. I think we saw that happening at Freddy's House of Fears, when I killed a ghoul and a rat and another ghoul were killed in the process or something, but it's not the greatest perk. It's just fun if it happens, and it can be effective, but yeah, obviously at rank 1 it doesn't do a whole lot. You should have maxed it out. This one is important, maxed out strength. Now we already are at 15 strength, but this is just a little boost to our damage, which is very necessary here, so overall we should be at 20 or 21 strength. I'm going to take a look at it soon. And the rest here is pretty straightforward. We have 1 plus to each the legendary luck, charisma and agility, as well as legendary perception. Now obviously, if possible, use a perk point somewhere else and in another stat, and move that stats perk to charisma, because legendary charisma is kinda useless because it doesn't let you share more perks. However, on our occasion we are at 7 charisma, so yeah, we would have needed 6 in order to share, so it does work anyways. But yeah, those are just giving me the ability to use a bit more perks. And yeah, that was it. I wanted to show the stats real quick, just because I'm curious at the moment myself. Yeah, we do have strength at 20, and even with Class Freak, our agility is sadly down to 14. No way around it, because one extra agility comes from legendary agility, and that's debuffed by our talent mutation, which obviously you shouldn't have. So yeah, therefore we were at agility 15. But yeah, other than that, nothing all too interesting here. And the other thing I didn't really mention, it was in the video, but here we can see it, our defenses. So we are at 222 damage resistance and 272 energy resistance without varying anything. So I think that's a good point. There would obviously be a room for a bit more. I already talked about the perk in luck that could give you a bit more defenses, but for not wearing any armor, I think this is actually a good standing point. Now we're quite a bit away from the diminishing returns on the damage resistance side more than on the energy resistance side, but overall you saw we have quite good survivability. After all, I bet there are some people running around in armor that have around the same or even maybe less resistances. So if I had to compare, this is a complete guess by the way, I guess this is comparable to a level 50 set of sturdy leather armor. Probably, that could be possible. Something among those lines. I'm not quite sure though. Anyways, it was enough combined with a vampire's weapon to be alive. By the way, what I just saw is I mentioned Ricochet in the beginning of the video, which in a last effort I ditched. I used those 3 perk points from luck to boost both my charisma and 1 extra perk point to perception, I think. It was just, yeah, mostly I wanted to have a bit more damage output in terms of using Tenderizer. I was just feeling a little bit too weak and I felt like, yeah, it was an okay twist there. Not using Ricochet. It works very well with our Vampire's weapon, especially if we're going against super mutants or so on, because if they hit us and the hit is reflected, then that hit can heal us. And after all, it's 18% less damage on average from ranged attacks. But I felt like, yeah, spending those points to do a little bit more damage was more beneficial in the long term. And well, that's it guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. This was a bit more of a challenge build for me. As I said, I wanted to use this character here as a basis for another character in the future, just to see how tanky you can get. Definitely pushing ourselves over the diminishing returns with still relatively simple means. I guess we're using some lightweight armor, but we're going to see how that turns out. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the video guys. See you next time and bye.